Welcome to the Real Talk with Megan podcast, where we have candid conversations about the things that matter most. I'm your host, Megan, and we're going to deep dive into the topic of mental health. In a world where we're constantly pressured to perform, achieve, and excel, it's easy to neglect our mental health. But the truth is, mental health is just as important as physical health, and it's time we started treating it as such. Join the conversation as we explore the complexities of mental health issues and speak with experts, advocates, and individuals who have lived through these challenges. Together, we'll work to destigmatize mental health and start conversations. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready for a real and raw conversation about mental health on the Real Talk with Megan podcast. We are back and we have Donnie here again today. I'm excited for him to be here. And this topic is one that you know a lot about. Like, I was thinking about it, and I think if you got paid a penny for every time you said one of these phrases, you would probably be a very rich person and could just retire and live off.
Well, let me guess the phrase.
There you go.
Things I can change and things I can't.
That's it. And it falls right back in with the Serenity Prayer. And that's something you use in counseling with
Yeah.
people so much. And I think it's such an important thing. I know it fits a lot with like when you have addictions and that, and it goes through, I believe, the 12-step program, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So,
AA and NA has
yeah.
been using it for decades and decades.
Yeah. And so having that, but like from somebody who doesn't have a background in that, this has been something that has been a game changer in my own life.
The interesting thing is that the Serenity Prayer was written by a Protestant preacher in 1932.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, oh wow. And yet still, people all over America, all over the world pray it every day and
Yeah.
focus on it. And it has been a lifesaver for people who are mired in addiction.
Yeah.
I looked up serenity. I'd never really looked up
Okay.
what serenity meant,
It's a great thing.
but it says it's calm, peaceful, untroubled.
Mm.
All those things remind me exactly of what the world is not.
Oh, the opposite.
The
Yes.
world is totally opposite of calm, peaceful, and
Yeah.
untroubled. It's hectic, it's crazy,
Yeah.
it's hard to find any peace, and there is trouble around every corner.
Yes.
So, how do we find serenity in such a mixed up, upside down world where right's wrong and wrong is right? How do we do
Yeah.
that?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, I would not know the answer. I would not know. I'd be like, Jesus, like he's the answer for everything, right? It's like the Sunday school answer for you. And I love that in the Serenity Prayer, it talks about having the wisdom.
Yes.
And that's a key
Why don't
point.
we read that
Yep.
serenity? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. So I think you're right. Wisdom is a huge piece of it. But why do we have so much trouble figuring out what the things are we can change and the things we can't?
Worry, fear,
Yeah.
the chaos around us. Sometimes when you are in the midst of things, you can't see outside of what's right in front of you.
That's really, really good. And the thing of it is you mentioned fear. The biggest fear, what is the biggest fear all of us have? It's the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
We're always afraid of the things that and so we waste all of our energy on the things that we cannot change. We have no energy left for the things that we can.
Yeah.
So that's why we pray the prayer, God, give me the wisdom
Yeah.
to know the difference. So it's a couple of things. It's twofold. First of all, we're inviting God into this.
Yeah.
We're saying, God, we
It's
need your
important.
help. Yes. And so in the Bible, it says we have no wisdom because of what? We don't ask for it.
Yeah.
So we're specifically doing what God told us to do.
Mhm.
If you want wisdom, ask for it. It comes right out of James.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that makes the prayer so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things that it can be a simple thing to add to your life and add to your routine. And we can get to some more practical tips in a little bit. But I guess one of my questions that I was kind of thinking through is how do you interpret like the difference between what you can control and what you can't control?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what I was just talking about is the simple inviting God
Yeah.
into it and saying, God, I need some wisdom here. Help me to sort through this thing. So it seems like such a simple thing. Here's the interesting part for me. When I focus on the things that I can change, okay, so sometimes my wife, and I love her dearly, I've been with her for 40 years, but there are things about her that drive me crazy.
Hmm.
And so if I focused all my energy on trying to change those things,
Yeah.
it would not work. So what I've learned to do is I have learned to accept those things because that's how God made her.
Yeah.
That's who she is.
Mhm.
And so then I focus the things that I can change. I can change the way that I act toward these things that I don't really
Yeah.
like. I can change my attitude toward them. And then when I begin to change those things, sometimes it will change the thing that I couldn't change. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And don't go into that thinking that if you do change the things you can, it's obviously going to change things you can't, because it doesn't always work that way. Because again,
Yeah.
one thing we can't control is people.
Yeah.
That
So who can we change,
we can
Megan?
change ourselves.
That's the
Yeah.
only thing we can change. That's the
Yeah.
only person we can change.
Absolutely. And that goes back, like, kids can get this too because kids have big emotions. And so even with my daughters, we've done this like very simply of like, what can you control? What can you not control?
Yeah. So a big test is coming up
Hmm.
this week, and I don't want to take it. I'm
Yeah.
afraid I'm going to fail it. So can I change the fact that the test is coming up?
Nope.
Nope, you can't do it. So what can I do? Well, I can do the
Yeah.
work. I
Yeah.
can
Study.
study so I can pass the test.
Absolutely.
Those are the things I can change the way I study.
Yeah.
I can change the way I prepare for the test. I can't change the test.
Right.
I cannot write one question on the test.
Yeah.
That's the teacher's job.
Yep. No,
So,
it's
yeah.
it's been that way, and, like, in those moments, like, with our kids, because 'cause I've put this in my own life, and I have to stop myself and be like, "Okay, what in this situation can I change? What can I not?" And when I asked our oldest, and I was like, "Okay, what can you not change?" And she's like and my daughter was like, "Well, the situation," and there was a situation with friends, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
and I was like, "But what can you change?" And she went, "My attitude." Like, just like that, and I was like, yep, sometimes that's how we feel about having to change the way are, having an attitude towards things. But even just at that small age, they can understand that. And we can learn something from that as well.
So I've used this line a lot of times. I think the whole Serenity Prayer
Mm.
is King James version. I like to boil it down to Donnie's
Yes.
version.
Yes.
Here are the things I can change. Here are the
Mhm.
things that I can't. God, give me the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah.
And I've been using that in some form or fashion all my life for
Yeah.
the last at least 35 years of my life. And it's made a huge difference.
Yeah.
It has opened my eyes to the things I can't change. It's like a flat tire. If we go out in our
Mhm.
car and the tire is flat
Yep.
and we get mad, we'll throw things, we'll
Yeah.
cuss, we'll go crazy.
Uh-huh.
But the flat tire is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's a flat tire.
Right.
It has, can you control it?
No.
Can you put, I mean, you can't control it. It went flat. So
Mhm.
the tire is doing exactly what it was meant to do when the
Yeah.
air is out of it.
Yeah.
It's a flat tire. So instead of wasting all our energy on cussing the tire,
Right.
let's start focus on calling. Here's a shout out for Big O, I guess, but let's call Big O, or let's call somebody who can take that flat tire
Yeah.
and turn it back into what it was intended to be.
Yeah.
Now that sounds really simple, but you can run that in every direction you want to. It can go in any way in your life you want it to go.
Absolutely. And that brings a really good point, is that typically the things that we can't control are the things we start to focus on.
Yeah.
If you don't put this into your life and put it right in front of you to really have the wisdom between those two things. So one of those things we even mentioned earlier is that fear and the worry aspect of our life. We worry about so many things.
Everything.
Everything, and especially if you're a parent, you worry about so
Oh,
many more things,
absolutely.
things you never thought you would worry about, and you do. And so that's one piece of, like, I've learned through studying and different things and just through life, is that that worry sits with the past or it sits with the future. And we focus on those things, but we can't do anything about them. So when you look at, like, your past, like, you can't change what happened in your past,
That's exactly right.
but you can learn from it, and you can find new ways to do things or change the route you're going.
And don't drag your past into your future,
Yes. Yeah.
because then all of a sudden your future becomes your past.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned your children.
Mhm.
They're when we think about things we can and can't change with our children, we want to figure out a way to control that, right?
Yep.
So when they're babies, we do have control. We have total control over the things that we can
Right.
change. We do
They're
everything.
dependable on you.
Yeah, but as they grow older
Mhm.
and then they become teenagers,
Get some independence.
they get some independence, and then that creates fear, and then
Mhm.
that creates things we want to change but we can't change, and then they become adults,
Yeah.
and then we really can't change any of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I've got kids young enough that I can still have a little bit of, good influence in their life,
Yeah,
yeah, I still can't control because they are becoming preteens and
yeah,
working there. I don't even wanna think about them being adults yet.
exactly. So Megan, in your own most people in all your podcasts and all the
Yeah,
things that you've freely admitted that you suffer with anxiety.
absolutely.
So, how has this simple truth helped you overcome some of the things
Yeah.
that create that anxiety?
Yeah, I mean, this has definitely helped because it puts things into perspective. Like I said earlier, like when you're in the middle of something and it feels overwhelming, it can almost feel like everything is just too much. But when you can take yourself out of this scenario for just a second, even though you may not be able to change anything at the moment, but if you can take yourself out and look at it from, a wider view and see things, okay, what can I change? What can I not change? And then you start focusing on the things you can, that overwhelming feeling starts to dissipate. It starts to go
Yeah,
away.
that's really good. When you look at it as this whole great big thing of
Mm.
I have all these things I
Yeah,
have to deal with, if you try to deal with them all at once, it will overwhelm you.
right.
But if you break them down into small things, then you look at the ones I can change this. I can
Yeah.
step into this and change it and make a difference. And then I won't have so much anxiety
Mhm.
looking at the things that I can't change
Yeah.
in the same.
Because a lot of anxiety, I know for me and other people I've talked to, deals with that worry. You start to have anxiety because whether we talked about the past before, but then in the future, you start thinking of every possible scenario that could go wrong. And that's a
Yeah.
piece where your anxiety goes to. And if you start saying, okay, what can I control? What can I not control? And then you look at that future piece and you're like, well, I can't control how this person's going to react. I can't control what's going to happen here or this. That starts to take that power away from what is controlling you at that moment.
Yeah. And so many people, you sit down at the doctor's office and they've
Mm.
run all these tests and
Yeah.
they say, "We're sorry, Mr. Whitlow, you got cancer."
Mhm.
Well, I can't stop the cancer.
Yeah.
If I have cancer, I have it. So the part I can control is they'll begin to lay out treatment plans
Yeah.
for me and the ways that I can battle the cancer.
Mhm.
But can I change the fact that I have cancer? No, I would want to,
Yeah.
but if I waste all my energy worrying about the cancer and then worrying about the fear of the unknown, so am I going to die from this?
Mhm.
How sick am I going to get?
Yeah.
If I have chemo, is all my hair going to fall out? That
Right.
really wouldn't be a problem for me, but it might be for you.
Yeah.
But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if we focus on the things that we can change, the how to attack the cancer, how to defeat the
Yeah.
cancer, those are the things that are really valuable in life.
Yeah, and focusing on that too, it brings you a fuller life because you're not so weighed down by all those things that may or may not happen,
That's
but
may or may not happen is
may or
a
may not.
great analogy.
Yeah, and so you're able to kind of like live life, and the best way to do that is in the present, in the moment you're in. And I think about that again with kids is like you only have for a short time before they become adults. And so you live in that moment, not thinking about like future, like, well, what if this happened? What if this? No, like what's right now. And that
You
takes you
said that before we started the
through.
podcast. You said, "We so often worry about the past, we
Hmm.
worry about the future, but we don't live in the moment right
Yep.
now. What's going on right now?"
Hmm.
So right now, you and I are sitting in your office
Yep.
talking about the things we can and can't change.
Yeah.
So let's focus on that right now
Mm.
instead of what I'm going to have for lunch or
Right.
who I'm meeting next or
Yeah.
how that's going to go or is that going to be a problem?
Yeah. And that changes like the amount of times that being present, I know that's not exactly what this podcast was about, but it fits right within, but the
Yeah.
amount of time that that changes how a relationship, like between two people, if you're being present in that
Oh,
moment and
absolutely.
you're not just focusing on those other things or what I have coming next and all
Yeah.
that,
Well,
it
that's one of the things you can
is
change.
exactly.
It's changed Debbie and I's relationship because I'm a really busy person, and there were times that I would just run around like my hair was on fire all day, and then I would get home and I would just shut down.
Mhm.
And I would look at my phone and I would be distracted. And the older I've got, I know what Debbie needs. She needs me to be present.
Mhm.
She needs to be heard. And if I'm on my phone, so now when I get home, if we're eating dinner or we're out to dinner, I put my phone away. I don't
Yeah,
look at it because that's something I can change.
absolutely.
And that will change the way she looks at Donnie.
Yeah. That's a the phone is a huge piece for so many people because that brings up so many more worries because it's like, well, I'm not like this person. You start to compare yourself, and that
Mhm.
leads into a whole nother thing.
Oh, yeah.
But if you can start to just focus on, okay, I need to do this because it's something I can control, you will see the outcome. And those are things that you don't necessarily always see. A lot of people I've talked to, they're like, I don't see a difference. And like, even though I've made changes, and I'm like, well, you don't necessarily see them all right
Right.
away. It's almost like weight loss. Like, if you look at yourself in the mirror day after day after day, you're not going to see that.
Yeah.
But if you look at yourself 6 months down the road and you've
Oh,
been
yeah.
putting in the work, you can see the difference and you get to see that the growth that's happened.
Well, and you and I have had a lot of
Mhm.
conversations about self-image,
Yep.
and it's a huge problem for a lot of people. And but a lot of times they don't take the genetic factor into play,
Right.
and we can't change our genetics.
Right.
We can want to, but
Mhm.
we can't. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things we can't change. So what can we change? Okay, so what if there's something about you that you really don't like?
Mhm.
If you feel like pick anything, I don't like my teeth. My teeth aren't white enough.
Right.
Well, go do get some
Get white.
whitener and brighten them up.
Yeah.
If I don't like the color of my eyes, I can't change that,
Mhm.
but I can change everything around
Yeah.
the way I put my makeup on, the way I do different. You follow
Yeah.
me?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we get caught up in our self
Mhm.
image. And most of the time we look at ourselves and say, boy, I just really don't like what's looking back at me.
Yeah.
And if you remember, then I would ask you, well, what does Ty see when he
Right.
looks at you? And what do
Yeah.
your children see when they look at you?
Those were very different things.
And then what does God see
Yeah.
when he looks at you?
Yeah. It's when you can get to a place that you can accept yourself for who you are. And like, yeah, there may be things you do want to change and you can change and you
Right.
can put that in, but like you still have to be able to love yourself and love yourself like God loves you because he created you in his image, which is amazing. And that's a hard thing for some people to grab their minds around. But when you can do that, this idea of what I can control and what I can't control becomes a little bit easier because you're
Yeah.
able to see things from not that just negative perspective all the time.
Right. It still interests me that this Protestant pastor wrote
Mhm.
this prayer in 1932,
Yeah.
and it was not written for addicts or
Mhm.
alcoholics, yet it fits so well. And it's on one of the things when I counsel someone, I've been clean for 29 years, and I take this token
Mhm.
that I got off of I did the same with
Yep.
you. And I said, Megan, read the back of it,
Yeah.
read it out loud. And so for an addict, what it does is it tells me I can't change my past.
Mhm.
I am an addict and I can't change that,
Right.
but I can change my future.
Yep.
That is the thing I can change. And that's why it's so helpful
Mhm.
in NA and AA
Yeah.
and people who struggle with addictive behavior of any kind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it has to do with like, not to get into all the specifics, but like the way your brain works and those neural pathways. When you can start putting those things and repeating those things over and over, that starts putting new neural pathways that the other ones that have been so negative or just like gripped you from your past will start to change to be this
Yeah.
new thought process.
Well, here about a year ago, I redecorated my office and I came
Mhm.
across the hallway and I asked you to help me.
Yep.
And one of the things you chose to put on the wall was what? It's two frames. And what does it say?
One of them says what I can control, and the other one says what I can't. And it has a list of a bunch of different things that Anybody could look at that and they can see themselves in it.
Yeah, and every time I counsel someone,
Yeah.
after they've been in just a few times, I just start pointing toward
I've
the
got it on
wall.
my wall too. It's an important thing. I mean,
Yeah,
we have it on our wall at home just to keep it in front of us, keep it reminding us to keep thinking that way. So that would be a practical tip, is like having that in front of you. What are some other practical
yeah.
tips that people could use to kind of go ahead and put this into their life?
One of the things that I tell people all the time is pray this over you
Mhm.
every day.
Yep.
Say this prayer before your feet even hit the floor.
Yep.
And if you do that over and over and over, it can become a chant, but that's not what you want. You
Mhm.
want to actually hear yourself. You want to say it out loud so you can hear it in your own ear.
Mhm.
And it is a game changer. It can be really a powerful tool in your life.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. One of the last things I have is, what advice would you give to someone who is struggling to accept the things they can't control? They're in that moment of feeling overwhelmed. They're in it. What are some advice that you could give?
Some of the most important advice you can give anybody is just to back off of it for a minute
Mm,
and look at it through a different set of eyes.
yep.
We get so caught up in it, and our mind begins to race, and it
Mm,
starts this circle
yep.
of going around and around and around with the same thing. And if you can pause, just hit pause and step back and look at it through a different lens for just a minute and really search for the things in it you can change
Yeah.
and the things that you can't, it's a game changer.
Yeah. And I would say too, and this, I think I say this every time I have a podcast episode go out, but if that is you and you are in the middle of that chaos and you don't see a way out, or see, you hear us talking about that, you're like, that sounds great, but like reality can't do that. I encourage you to find someone to talk to. Talk to someone, because they can help you step back. They can help you push pause, get you into a different perspective so that you can see things and you can start to do, like, figure those things out and figure
Exactly.
out what you can control, what you can't control.
If I leave no other legacy here at First Capital, what I want it to be is it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
And that's seek help.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing.
I love that line, and I love to add just a little extra of like, it's okay not to be okay, but let's not stay that way,
Amen.
because that is the key. Like, it is okay. Like, I grew up in church and it wasn't okay to not be okay. You're a follower of Christ. You're supposed to be perfect, and whole perfectionist piece is another side of
And
that.
honey, just give it to God.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
pray about it, have more faith, all
Yeah.
those things. But
And
it
I'm not putting God in a box. I'm
no,
not
he could
saying he can't
definitely,
take it, but that's not
absolutely,
usually what he
yeah.
does.
But it is okay. I mean, God and Jesus came for the hurting. He came
That's
for the
right.
broken, and we are broken people. We live in a broken world. Like, that is part of us. And so
Yeah.
if we can acknowledge that and then find the tools, whether that's through church, through prayer, through counselors, through
Through
other people,
medication.
through medication, however you find that, there, God has given us many opportunities to find a way to get better and to find ways to manage, the things we
And
struggle
so if
with.
we have a problem and we seek help, that is one of the things that we can change.
Yep, that is. I think that's a great way to end this. So if that is you and you need somebody to talk to and you're listening to this and you made your way through this and you're struggling, please reach out. My email is on the show notes, and I would love to chat with you and help you find that person to talk to.
Thanks for listening to Real Talk with Megan. Remember, you are not alone. Seeking help is a sign of strength, and taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health. We'll see you next time for more honest conversations.